Lukey. Great show for us all today. It really is all about the LifeColloid, which is the smallest building block basic, in our body. Yes? It's a new form, which, of course, I say new because why? Well, because it hasn't grabbed attention too much. That it's really the discovery that could rewrite your insight into a lot of how you're looking at life, for sure. It really is confirmed ever more by contextual, expert validity that you've got not really mysterious RNA. No, that's LifeColloid. And it's like ribosome that have connected to a histone molecule, simple as all of it. LifeColloid, in fact, so you've got to be thinking about every single substance that's going on in the body as being a bit of a machinery that's come together because of LifeColloid itself and our involuted past. So it's life living where our body is, and it's not strange entities whatsoever. Somebody could suddenly, who didn't have any idea about this, call these things, oh, there's an obelisk, and give it a new name, that's an obelisk, because it hasn't been just identified because it's just been an artifact. Why? Because you just used dead blood cell and stained cell technique. Wow, how bad is that? Didn't bother to look under a microscope at living blood. Why not? For a long time now, you could have, but you haven't, okay. But if you did, you'd find LifeColloid. You'd have colloid of life forming into spore and spore forming into double spore as LifeColloid. And you have these things, in tissue. So LifeColloid, really like bacteria also, and spore and fungus and mold, and or could be given a name like the obelisk. Because in your mind, that didn't seem to fit into your education. Why? Because what a controlled education that was, my God. LifeColloid really is what makes up the RNA molecule, and that gives you capacity to then make various things. And it's absolutely that you've got a library of information that's coming from the LifeColloid. And that's not like a virus, A virus is a word, and it's equivalent to snake venom. So kind of it's really not a proper word to use where you're talking about what this is, because this is called the useful theory of a spore or a LifeColloid. So instead, of course, you've got this LifeColloid, and it's not a shadowy middle background replicating and surviving and spreading. No, got nothing to do with anything like that. It's your terrain. And that's only going to allow a certain expression to be existed there. Otherwise, you've got a disruption to the ease you're ordinarily feeling. So LifeColloid, it could be called obelisks, or God help us, I can think of about 10 other names, 15 at least. But your mouth and gut, you've got LifeColloid, and you've got these, within everybody. So, somebody's going to say, oh, I found a heart inside somebody. And that's right. You found a heart then in everyone, not just one person. So LifeColloid really in the intestine is implantable. Yeah. And you've got not, people go, God help us, strange rod-like structures called artifacts. I'm not sure. We haven't ever seen anything like that. A proper taxonomy of LifeColloid really represents, if you take this aboard, which is a grand unified totality, it's not a theory. No, it's a branch of life, and it's living, detectable, and has been for eons. And that is a species of our of the LifeColloid that makes up as a double spore your red blood corpuscle, which is totipotent. What does that mean? It means it could go polymorph into all that's needed at the tissue site, given a proper terrain for that to happen. So LifeColloid, where your blood is a organ, that's right, it's a liquid crystal organ, and influencing your body's function, yes? And maybe you should be sort of realizing this, that your blood is more than a gas transporter. That's right. LifeColloid discovery really is a life cycle, yes, and this is more a scientific innovation. Yes, it is, because what's it about? Not a pill you can sell. Oh, diddums. That's right. Because you want to just distract everybody away from their lifestyle? That's right. Your lifestyle. Yes? And Jubb's Secrets of an Alkaline Body and Jubb's Cell Rejuvenation are works that you could look into. You could look into Jubb's little red book too, more about eye awareness. Anyway, coming back to, God, we've got to call these little things obelisks. Yeah, because who looked into any literature in the world? So most people writing, God help us, they never are an expert, because why? Well, you never bothered to look into all the literature within the field of what's existing. If you did, you'd come up with this insight for sure. And you'd be doing things like consuming things like that BCT formula we have, or the Gouda, because that doesn't have to diagnose or treat any condition whatsoever. It's centuries old, and you're just looking after yourself. And it's just like the stars where you are in a search for alien life out there otherwise. So the body really function isn't alien. No, not at all. The double spore and the spore really are part of yourself, not alien whatsoever, and not hidden only because your view was just biased. LifeColloid work in mutual lived assistance are in a state where you've got LifeColloid transmutation. Ooh, really? Yeah, what's that? Element transforming from one element into another. Yes, you do. And you've got this where you've got enzymatic connected material, like a neutron as a magneton, a north and a south positive as magneton. Yes? So the world really, can't you say it's not known? It is. It's just reminding you more now there's a frontier of discovery within your own self, which is really about your own inner space. So if you've looked into Secrets of an Alkaline Body and Jubb's Cell Rejuvenation, how good is that? What about the Life Food Recipe book? But you've got double spore and you've got nucleic acid forming from red blood corpuscle where none existed before. What? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Blood corpuscle could be seen, of course, to be totipotent. What does that mean? It means it could become any structure that's needed by your body, including organelle and DNA and RNA, and it all does this because of a process called aggregating, fusing, and differentiating. So the red blood corpuscle could reverse differentiate itself from what it is into the whole range of things that's inside a egg. And so everything became from a red blood corpuscle, and suddenly like a sperm is there, or an egg. And a red blood corpuscle forms, and then everything else forms after that. You see, if you look into a chicken's egg, so there's an involuted process where you've got Jubb's Cell Rejuvenation, understanding this for quite some time, fully priming of a more therapeutic application for you. It doesn't need any more research highlight of some RNA world which is dead to you, and some a thesis of a hypo. What's a thesis of a hypo? Or is it a hyper, meaning it's a lot? It's a thesis of a lot or a thesis of nothing. Look, this is not a thesis of a hypo, okay? It's got nothing to do with the thesis of a hypo. Get rid of all your thesis of a hypo. Just stick with fact, period. And you haven't looked at the blood, so grow up. Why haven't you looked at the blood? Why not? Don't you know that LifeColloid make RNA up, you see? Yeah. How good is that? Wow. And also DNA as well. Or I'm going to just ask you, how does RNA form? And you can tell me because you studied it. Good. How about DNA? If I've just got RNA in a vat, can DNA form from that? Yes, it can. It does. Because it pleomorphs. What does that mean? It's not a fixed form, you nutter. Nothing exists like a fixed form, you nutter. Stop being unscientific and grow up. If you haven't looked at the blood, grow up. Go and get your red blood corpuscles and everything looked at. So LifeColloid could have prion. Ooh, prion, yeah, foot, mouth. That's the staggers. That's called where cattle or something goes coasty, where I come from. Or, it's all the animals that just die of older life, but they don't. They die of a congestive condition, period. And it's made up out of prion, which is undigestible. So you're going to tell me that certain protein is not formed to be undigestible? You're a bulldust artist. And why don't you know about protein that's not digestible? Oh, well, you probably don't know about that because you've only just been focused on a dead food diet and you never heard about life food, which is one word, not two. It's one word, life food. It's like life boy, life raft, life vest. It's one word. It's a noun that's definable. And so, in modern ribonucleic acid research, you've got advanced sort of remissions and all sorts of things, and you've got cell rejuvenation evidence, of course, demonstrating all of this by its structure and its contextual validity and expert validity. So intestinal tract has got a lot of RNA and DNA catalytic type of information and storage capacity, and the discovery of LifeColloid isn't new, no, and it's what makes up RNA. And so it's not a fossil. Gee. No, it's right in your day right now. You've got gut-brain axis, you've got LifeColloid, you've got substances which help protect and seal up little gaps that help your brain can keep protected. And your gut too. Have you ever heard about leaky gut? Yes, you have. But that's a LifeColloid little molecule, like claudin-5, which is really useful. Claudin-5 really is the main health benefit and maintaining the integrity of your blood-brain barrier as well as your gut. So you've got protective function where it's critical and preventing neurological disorder from excitotoxin from going up into the brain and what have you. And the therapeutic application of where you're looking at how do you treat stroke where this is, or how can you help recover where Alzheimer's is and epilepsy. Can you do it if you don't regulate the blood-brain barrier? You've got blood-brain barrier permeability? No. So what are you doing? You haven't looked at that? That's crazy. Why don't you just do a test for that? See, this is an approach which is called nutritional. Do you have an approach that's called nutritional? No. Well, why not? Well, because if you've got a handle on that, it's called cystic fibrosis, and pulmonary, specialists and people could understand this far quicker than most other professions. So what happens when you've got a zonulin test? How good is that? Wow, I'm talking to somebody who really understands everything. Yes? Because it's measuring the level of protein zonulin, which regulates your intestinal permeability. Do you have access to that? What, you don't think you've got a leaky gut? You don't think that's a potential condition that's called coming from celiac and diabetes type 1 or autoimmune disease? Of course it is, because you're eating wrong. So the test you could do so simple, God help us. And do you have to do tests? No. I could save you a lot of tests. So the result really could be interpreted by some healthcare provider because they've just got a natural fluctuation where that is in a variable test specificity instead. So you've got health professionals questioning, of course, the clinical utility of a zonulin testing. So it's far more effective for you to identify the underlying cause of your intestinal permeability. Wouldn't you agree? If you haven't done that, it's probable that you've got iatrogenic death. Yes? And you're the cause of it, because why? You're not acting prudent. If you are, then you've focused on doing a quick test to see that you've definitely got leaky gut. So the underlying cause of a dead food diet, really maybe you should look into where this work is so you can heal that leaky gut. And where do you start? That's what I'm really good at. So most people, it's a lot of information, but where do you start? Yes? So it's not that your intestinal permeability is what's often the cause of other factor, where dead food intolerance is in lifestyle that's relevant. You've got, inflammatory bowel syndrome and conditions of that stress, and how about getting rid of it? How about having a useful test to see what underlying condition could be challenging where you are? And if you're looking to improve, how about getting a zonulin test right now? If you don't go along with what I'm saying, no, you've got a leaky gut. Do you need to have a test? No. But if you did, you're going to see it. So if you look at a test that's abnormal where blood clotting is, you've got clotting agent, yes? You've got microplaque, amyloid, and you've got that in the bloodstream. Don't tell me you're not going to be able to see the effect of it. You sure are. So in germ cell rejuvenation, really it's about heat, cold shock protein and cryotherapy, which is cold, of course, and, heat to reduce the condition of the cell and cause more apoptosis where they need to be, where things need to be cleared away. And you're reducing inflammation and circulation. You're starving the neoplastic condition by cold shock and temperature, and to extreme cold and causing of intermediate sort of neoplastic cells to be able to go through apoptosis. And you're activating those proteins, and they're called cold shock protein. Ever heard of that before? No. Wow. So you're looking at the magical benefit of cold shock protein. And you can find those in various plants in nature, okay? Because you and I are not born with any of that. And this is sort of coding that comes into your brain of your mem. That's your membrane of your cells. So this protein activation really destabilizes messenger RNA, and this is what's going on. It's all degraded. It's all enzymes that's degraded, but it's not. Some of that substance is it's not able to be broken down because it's synthetic. Can't be broken down. So it's like synthetic. It's going to interfere. Is it logical that you would put something in like that? Absolutely not. You're a nutter if you did. So in germ cell rejuvenation, it's a real focus on getting more heat and cold shock protein activation and cellular membrane healing response and clearing away, neoplasm through apoptosis, which is the breaking down of matter which is not meant to be there. Okay. So now you're listening to how protein activation destabilizes messenger RNA, and it impairs protein synthesis and contributes to cell death, and the process called apoptosis, you see, yes? So can you still get any of that if it's injected and it was frozen or it wasn't frozen? It's like, oh my God, you've got a lot of synthetic substance. It's not any of it meant to be in the body. So it's just totally wrong. So you're looking at the overall mechanism, really, of a direct cellular destruction where triggering of the immune response is, and you've got these cold and heat shock protein, which really are triggered to help you where things are. So germ cell rejuvenation really is about phytonutrient and things which, in your lifestyle, which really causes you to be able to have micro nanoparticle and also amino acid, which is coming from like Gouda, for instance, as an example. It's free-formed amino acid. So protein really could interfere where synthesis is destabilizing the structure of messenger RNA that's truly up to a certain point maybe synthetic, and then you've got this debris that's left over that's got to be clathrated and cleared away. And how's your body do anything that's like that? You see, you've got cold shock protein activation where suddenly, you've got in a chill, and now your intestinal LifeColloid will have pleomorphed, and they release a range of cold shock protein, and RBM3 and SIRP sort of are examples of CRIP. But job cell rejuvenation now is sort of really, you've got these heat and cold shock protein, and if you really get into the science of this, you've really got an immune response more. You've got heat and thermo and cryotherapy, which trigger immune response, and these are the things which really can help you with neoplasm. So as you're clearing away a neoplastic cell, you're activating your immune system to recognize and clear up tumor cells. So it's like, transforming things, not attacking. No, not at all. Different. You've got a mutual lived assistance. And how about doing a cleanse for 42 days and looking into this? Yes? You can find that at jubdavid.com. So a program really that's using heat and cold shock protein and the science of far infrared. You've got immunological clearing away of tumour and things that specific antigens and the danger signals where otherwise you've got that. You've got immune cells where dendritic cells are, and you've got an activation of T cells which clear up neoplastic conditions throughout the body, where you've got cold more at night and you're activating your brown fat cells, okay, for energy. So cryotherm and thermotherapeutics sort of really could reduce tumour. It's done correctly where you're going through job cell rejuvenation. You've got cold shock response, you've got heat shock protein, you've got immune system starting to clear away neoplastic cells, and it's just doing it just automatically, you see. So you're starving and stopping the extraneous circulation of debris that's causing neoplasm and kidney conditions and things that's like that. And you've got you've got to be able to rid the synthetic polymerization of that gain of function. Yes, from injectables. And where did you get that from? Otherwise, you've got to dissolve all of that synthetic material. You could do that where job cell rejuvenation is, and maybe you need a microvoltage to be able to do that, like 4 microvolts, and that's going to dissolve things, you see, and take it down to below the level of hydrogen. If you're going to put the trust more where your protectedness is, I don't think I'd be putting that into fiction for sure. And where, of course, the crops are all dead and sprayed with, substances to make them ferment, so they're going to get more sugar. But that glyphosate Roundup is really not too good. So looking at microplaque and its adequacy, and what's the regular testedness that could look where your LifeColloid markers are, where ratio plasma is. You've got plasma tau 217, and you've got beta amyloid 1 to 42. Those are tests which could determine what type of condition you might have where somebody said, no, this person's got dementia. Yeah? You've got linked amyloid plaque. I'm sorry. That's it. So why don't you do a test for that? If you haven't, why not? Well, because you don't have an approach, do you? Why? Because what we're talking about is nutrition and nutritional support and detoxification. If you've got a condition called cystic fibrosis, it's the only thing which you could do. Why? Because you can't be given heavy metals and stuff like that. That'd be just off the chart. You wouldn't be able to break them down. So the test for synthetic amylin, like synthetic amylin analogs and premalatin, you've got to include a premalatin sort of challenge test measured of the particulate. And it's a change where the blood physically is seen and not seen, of course, where you've got tested LifeColloid markers or amyloid beta and A levels. You've got amylin and alpha and beta heterooligomers, you see, where the blood and tissue samples, and shouldn't you look at that? Yes. If you've not ordered any testedness for the primary toxin like heavy metal, which you didn't just take a bit of hair and send it and look to see, Well, this is going to be very negligent, yes, because heavy metal is certain, you see. And why didn't you just do a hair analysis to look at that? And, of course, the red blood corpuscle, not having looked at that and seen all these things, is negligent, utterly, because iatrogenic death is probably the leading cause of death, not the third cause of death after, heart attack and neoplasm. It's just a corporate type of a monopoly that is not any care like what we're talking about here. So microplastics and polyethenated glycols. How come you haven't researched the presence of microplastic in PEG and arterial plaque and all this lipoprotein A that gets laid down inside the arteries and then can't be broken down and becomes these really long, rubbery clots? And don't tell me that the safety of polyethenated glycol molecules, which can't be broken down, is anything ecological, because you could never find anything like that in the body. And so why would you want to put it in there? Because it doesn't have a proper magnetic domain. Synthetic nanolipid particle, really toxic, can't be broken down. It does get into the body, and the body does have enzyme-resistant protein and fat, and the N-glyconeurominic acid it connects to as its own platform. And after that, you've got a body surfactant acted, and it's a positive magnetic domain, and what's that going to do? It's going to clot. And getting rid of the corona, and what now? You've only got an embalmer, and so those are the people that AMSI left. That was left after 2020, to look at the membrane and how the corona of the body also was attacked. It didn't exist after this. You've got these polyethylene glycated types of nanomolecules, synthetics that never was before introduced, where you've got blood clots and clotting going on. And they say, no, it's supposed to keep everything apart because it's synthetic, but it doesn't. It has an absolutely great changed effect on the protein. So it really doesn't stop because you've just added more prion-like material, which stops proper foldedness, where you've got something that's totally not ecological. And so the caches of all microamyloid plaque, which you can see in the pleomorphing of that into a vine-like net, where it's connected to fibrin, it's just growing a vine-like net in your body as a LifeColloid. You can't say that you would dismiss the structural validity and contextual validity and expert validity of the fact that we're pointing out where you are listening to this podcast. It's a claim that you could see this unproven sort of administeredness of a contrasted agent, for instance, where MRIs are and this sort of thing, that we're biologics also. That's what they're called, injectables into the liquid, and or swab testedness. Could you see that the blood immediately after that under the microscope showed all these sort of artifact and things that start to come along? Of course, you've got fibrin, which is the clotting substance that's in the blood, and where you've got synthetic chylomicron of fats, and they form into more tube-like larger structure under the microscope. And you've got graphene oxide and a toxicity where heavy metal contaminant is. So what do you use more that's taken in? Yes, and now it's not asbestos, but it's graphene oxide instead. Have you heard about that? It's the new graphene oxide. So forget about glyphosate, which is Roundup, and everybody's spraying that over the property where you are. And so have you got glyphosate in your urine? Yes, you do. 80-90% of people tested sure do show that up when they have a piss. So glyphosate, which is Roundup, it's a certain amino acid needling, and what does it do? It bothers the shikimate pathways in the bee's gut. It stops toxins from being able to be, managed. It stimulates somatostatin where you're eating heavy protein, and it triggers the pancreas to be shut down after that. So the heart pulmonary challenges and all of this that cause diarrhea, yes, and cystic fibrosis, it's really, what's the purpose of washing all the vegetables with this ethylene diamino ultra-acetic sort of acid, which is EDTA, and that being approved as some additive also and chelated agent where food is. It completely pulls all the micronutrient out and robs all the cofactor for enzymes. So the food is dead after that, really bad, actually. You're going to improve yourself eating that food? No. It's not going to help. That's iatrogenic if you don't think about that. Why? Because you need fresh fruits and vegetables, not stuff that's all been washed out with chemical. So what helps preserve and make something good looking and it tastes sort of maybe better or something, but it's rubbery because it's got all these PEG molecules in it. And you're ending up with higher levels of glutathione concentration, which is fermented, and that's the fuel, which fuels neoplasm. So using EDTA and environmental cadmium levels, you can see that suddenly, because you don't have magnesium and these things, all these heavy metals like cadmium and things really being increased, and phytochylation and glutathione, where lettuce is grown, you've got buffered sort of nutrient solutions and things where all of that is just feeding their plastic condition more. Frozen packaged food is really inferior and just like dry hospital pudding. But if you just have bacon and eggs in the morning, what happened? You just woke up and suddenly you've got to eat? No, that's an addiction to nitrogen. It's like somebody's going to spend $12,000. They're going to do a test on you. God help us. They're going to put this dyes into your body, and they're going to put pegulated molecule there as well. And after that, it costs you $12,000, but you're toxified. And if you've got a cystic fibrotic state, how dare anybody do anything like that to you? Because your body shows that it's not possible to be able to break toxin down properly. So indirectly, of course, affecting where any compound is, it's the primary role of your ability for micromineral sequestration. And so you really need to have proper vitamin stabilization when you have this. But do you if you just eat cooked dead food? No, nothing exists in it. You could get any benefit from it, zero. So a vitamin is really like a fragrant nutrient. Is any fragrance in what you ate? The high temperature really breaks all of the molecular structure down, and so those vitamins are dead. There's nothing in it. It's called dead food. So you're going to help heal yourself up with that? No. So frozen vegetables rob thiamine B1, creating that deficiency. And it's a dead food diet, just lacking any enzyme because it's just got nothing in that vegetable anymore. You've got resistant protein and oxides. And you've got these fats which are insufficient. You've got thiamine, and you've got really a poorer type of absorption, and medical conditions where surgery's increased and medications increased. This is just off the chart wrong. So it's like a chronic alcoholism, impairing your absorption to intake anything. And so Life Food Program is what you want to look into. Otherwise, you've got risk factors. You see, like your thyroid isn't functioning, you're always cold, or you always have diarrhea. And this is on the road to called cachexia. You don't have anything to build muscle anymore. So where's the folate? You see, that's not folic acid. That's a toxin. Every single USPS vitamin is a toxin. So folate is something that comes from food, but are you going to get any of that from frozen, cooked, processed food? No. Are you going to have cognitive problems after that? Yes, for sure. Are you going to have short-term memory loss? Yes. Confusion, loss of balance? Yes. Because there's no B12 in your body, zero. So it's an iatrogenic condition that nobody decided, hey, we need to look at what proper cobalamin you have, and do you have levels of this needed, like B12? Otherwise, it's a megaloblastic type of anemia, which really can be caused of you to feel fatigued. And where's the B17, B12, B7 and B9? It's deficient. It's not even in the diet. So toxins which are synthetic, pills which are synthetic are all prion loaded. And fluids that are administrating where injectable intravenously are, you've got nanoparticles that's induced clotting. And you've got these pegulated, non-pegulated nanoparticles that interact where your blood is and starts to have coagulated system challenge where platelets, endothelial cells have proper coagulation factor or not. It messes all of that up. So my concern is mild, maybe, but how about you just kick back, because most people are just smiling. They're reckoning that they completely know what's happening back at the ranch house, when that's not true at all. It's a cost where care is, and if it's all just thousands of dollars to give you bacon and eggs in the morning, this is just off the chart. So it's an ill state of diarrhea and cystic fibrosis, never ever been talked about or even considered. And it's 100% escapable from, but not. It's inescapable otherwise. Because why? Because it's got contaminated, pegulated material. And you've got prion material, you see. What's prion material? It's material which causes a polymerization of the folding of other protein not properly in your body. And so it's alarming, because it's just going to run a big bandsaw straight through everything, and it's going to splatter all this prion right through everything. And does anybody care about that? No. Why? Because it's, in a time where you're supposed to be dead because of aluminium oxide just fall out from the sky. So prion is really connected also where you've got the formation of these anti-PEG antibodies. And why don't you do an anti-PEG antibody test? So simple. So now you're going to see that you've got definite lipid nanoparticles that's been used where some gene therapy was done on you, and those injectables and anything injected was an mRNA, what would be called a vaccine, but it's not a vaccine, it's called a prototype. So it's really not ecological. You've got cellular uptake and damage, and you look at the blood and you're going to see spiked protein there, because you're going to see the membranes of the red blood corpuscles spiked. So cell membranes are lipid bilayers, an interaction, and you've got hydrophobic forces between the nanoparticle structure where the cell membrane phospholipid molecule is, and you've got these pegulated nanoparticles which are in high concentrations, can induce the changes morphologically where your red blood corpuscle is, your erythrocyte. So it's by the degree of hemolysis, which is a rupturing of red blood corpuscle in your body going on, ongoing, which, have you ever had a chance to look at your blood? No. Well, that's just crazy. Everything you've done is blind and unscientific. So what happens when you look at your blood? How good is that? You can see, hey, an asymmetric warfare's been going on and you didn't even know it. It was silent without a shot that you heard being fired, and that exploded inside your body like words do off your screen. So it's fibrin, and clotting formation and the delivery of sort of targeted thrombolytic types of conditions. But to spend $12,000 test and get heavy metal tracer left in your body, how good is that? No, that's not good. You've got the surrounded synthetic stuff there. Oh, that's not good either. So it shouldn't be left in the body, should it? No. But did you look to see if it was from all the tests you've done? No, you didn't. Look, that's very iatrogenic, because you don't have a proper history where you are of what's going on. Polyethylene glycol coating, where you've got pegulation of stints and all sorts of standard strategies in nanomedicine, is completely not properly compatible where the body is. And it's a toxin because it's got a different magnetic domain than what your body has. And so it's a definite clotting harm and aggregations of pegulation, where generally that's reducing the interaction where blood components are, you see? So you've got this insufficiency and low density peg-like coatings, on stents, and they all have different surface charge exposed. Microplastic, don't tell me you've not body full of microplastic. It sure is. It's a cocktail. It's got nervine and synthetic hormone and gain of function toxin in it. And the base of that N-acetyl neuraminic acid, which is supposed to be in your body, but you've got N-glyconeuramic acid instead from flesh. And it's loose, it's cooked, and it causes storm, and you blow out and you die pretty quick. So the protein absorption really is impacted by these polyesylated glycol molecules, which are synthetics, and it stops you properly getting nutrition. So research into glyphosate alone, which indicates you've got an inhibitory type of primary hemostasis where the platelet function is, and directly affecting all of the prothrombin and the thrombin types of molecule where you've got clotting. So microplastic activates coagulated cascade and enhances fibrin formation. Now you've got binding to the clotting factors. You've got factor 7, or you've got factor 12, and you've got affecting fibrogen conversions, you see. So microplastic and glyphosate all have a synergistic effect. And now you've got thousands of parts of aluminium oxide, which is synthetic, and you've got fibrinogen absorption and microplastic directly interfering where blood clotting process is, and glyphosate potentially impacting that. And studies are going to show you that's just the fact of it. Aluminium adjuncts where that's put in are compounds that directly stimulate dendritic cells like crazy, and they overreact. And so suddenly you also have an autoimmune condition to any food where the aluminium was connected. You've got burnout of the immune complex, and immune complex is fully in the blood, not broken down. And so what have you got? You've got reduced albumin after that. So any treatment that you did that reduced albumin, anybody in forensics would let you know that was the cause of demise of the body, because it must absolutely raise albumin, not reduce it. Albumin is a super transporter. So no physiological aluminium, and what's not orthophilic is a state of a salt, is just an unphysiological salt causing molecule to get stuck in a gear and not being able to be broken down, and you cause inflammasomes, and aluminium oxide as an adjunctive where these injectables are is just off the chart. So totally a disaster, yes, of a cocktail death, where it leads to the release of inflammatory cytokines and the potent signals where the immune system is no longer to be functional properly, and it's all set upon by these forever molecules that are being sprayed out of cans and coming out of the laundry. You've got elevated markers like your C-reactive protein, and you've got interleukin, and you've got erythrocyte sedimentation rate I can think of. Coming off the top of my head, I hope actually that you're getting along with what this message is, but you've got nervine toxin, basic, yes, and antihistamine. Well, that's not going to be good if you've got dementia. You're going to be given antihistamine? No, you can't. You've got cystic fibrosis. Can you be given antihistamines? No, you can't. They're toxins. You've got calcium blockers, otherwise, and statins and heavy metal markers where polyethylene glycol molecules are, and everything is like a prion toxin exposed where synthetic hormone is, you see. So you're going to tell me that synthetic hormone wasn't used in the past? Well, better note that, because that today, of course, is outlawed. And if you did have that, well, you've got to claim where things are. You've got interaction of this cystic fibrotic transfer, a regulatory mutation symptom, and a worsening of digestive issues, and individuals which have got this CFTR mutation already issues, you've got digestive system and sticky mucus build up. You've got loose stools. You've got inflammation of the pancreas, inflammation of the meninges. Don't tell me that's not a potential of glyphosate to cause and gastrointestinal conditions because of synthetic molecule and prion. So if you're going to see a $12,000 test and it's toxic, definite, and nothing is proper where any medical history is collected, and somebody's got definite signs of edema, but it's never been noted. The corporatization of the world, where you've got a dead head and you've got corpse above, and a corpse can't hear you, it's just looking at a book somewhere else. So it's prudent that if you don't look into this, you've got really an iatrogenic condition and negligence. Now, frozen food, canned food, and high-processed dead food is enzymatic resistant, no value in what we're talking about, zero. Drugs are dead, no value, and it's total opposite. Did anybody who did a test like an MRI ever recover from that? Have you had a look? How much material was left behind? And why haven't you had a look at that? These are unphysiological salts. What happened afterward? Did you see a loss of life? How much albumin is left afterward? Look, when you're delaying to have a proper approach, you've lacked a proper detox, you've lacked proper nutrient. Can you say that this isn't so? Where's your proper guardian, just like the bees? And if it's left to happen, why don't you have a second opinion? How come there isn't any? Because it's criminal what's gone on and negligent, for sure. Don't tell me that harm's not done because somebody's had a payload of these polyethylene glycol molecules that's acidic, and where you've got gain of function inside your own body already because you've got the simian 40V virus and you've got a whole range of other things that are being put there also. So why shouldn't you be listening to this, of course, and taking action? It really is that your rights shouldn't be taken away by anyone else, and shouldn't you be supportive and prudent and everyone else too around you? It's really important that nobody can see if it's a toxin that anything should be administered like that. So when you urinate glyphosate, it really is looking at the toxic ticker of a monopoly of a cocktail, which is going to tell you that a toxin of a straw man was given to you just like an argument, and it's based upon some slippery slope. Where's the responsibility for who said that? Because they've done no due diligence whatsoever. So glyphosate is a phosphomethyl sort of amino acid derivative present sort of in a number of non-selective systems sort of herbicides. And during the many years just past, of course, glyphosate-based herbicides really have increased. The fact that detectedness of glyphosate, which is the main metabolite, and amino methylphosphonic acid, AMPA, how come you not be tested for AMPA? You don't think that you've got that? It's a view, really, maybe a mini view, but not really. 54,000 hours is behind what I'm just saying to you. Don't tell me that you don't have prion material and pegylated molecule and SMV40 gain of function just for a small bits of things you've got. The dangers. And don't tell me that a toxic zombie drug that were taken off the market. Why? Because it just had no efficacy. It caused serious abreactive types of conditions, emotional for people who took it. So drugs discontinued was a toxin, none of any efficacy, causing an abreactive state, and an underlying condition, of course, diarrhea afterward. So somebody's going to treat something but then cause something else. Why hasn't anybody looked at your blood and have a combined condition? And what you and I could do together about this matter, of course, you've got irritant that otherwise is sticking to some subject where anybody is. So you've got unique molecule that's synthetic, like these AMPA types of potential mechanism of action. That chemical compound could really be there where the body's function is, and you're supposed to notice those things. So it's really what's an added on or gain of function. That simian 40V, or simian Z40 really is a gain of function, isn't it? It's very old. If you've got the polio shots. So Jumbo Jet's recent calculation to scare and cause the pandemic and our planned and pandemic, an asymmetric warfare attacked to black swan everybody where the nation is, and that's what happened. And so don't tell me that an eye should be not on the monopoly that's existed, that created that and is ongoing. It's a result unknown, apparently, of some monopoly, yes? Not transparent, yes? Well, not transparent. Was there not some sort of false advertising and military budget and every 1 in every 10 Americans sort of nursed along by some, RICO Act probably? What's the major effect where you've got 36% even, if it was so, suffered as some apparent minor effect? Because statistics was not cared for to be collected proper. What's redacted and no one could claim, and that a claim didn't exist because of that, and contagion where it didn't exist and doesn't, it's a slippery slope of no value, but just information that's toxic, like an acquired information deficiency syndrome or animals in your digestive system. So it's an adverse reactive condition of what's de jure coming to you by the big poof, either or someone, and censorship after that, and everyone's injured experience. And don't tell me that a monopoly didn't do that. And you just don't need a spire like a pole somewhere to be conned, and that's called a conspire, which doesn't exist in a monopoly. If you have something to conspire, well, that means there's certainly not a monopoly, right? That's right. So what's being burglarized is just your property. By the moment that anybody is come to be abridged of yourself, it was to take over what your property was and is, and to commit genocide in the past where things have gone. And you're going to say, oh, no, genocides have happened in the past. No. And workers, if you were a worker within the field of that, just like the killing fields, and you were drafted, maybe there was trespass, forgery, of course there was, of your property taken, and ongoing crimes around all of that, irreparable. So losses of property, you're going to tell me that that's not going on where under the collar of law where everybody can see that is? That's a felony for any official to be participating in any of that, where it's a theft, okay, against we the people. It's a key element that distinguishes what is going on, which is you're being burglarized of all your property and trespassed, and forgery and occupiedness to conceal the legal name fraud that it's done under. So what's the public viewing where any vessel is, where it's burglarized, you see, and you're looking only at a BC document which says your mother was an informed aunt. So what's the intent to take possession of your property unlawfully? And what's a divok? Is that Hebrew? What's a divok? Is that a Hebrew word for like a bad spell? Divok. Yes, it is. So if you spell that backwards, is someone that was Hebrew that was behind the actual naming of all of this? What's a covert fact, of course, that doesn't need anything except you only have a monopoly, not a conspiracy. You've got a monopoly. And it's title conversion, and that's the crime. And considering what's given, of course, you're a man and a woman, and that's your title. And if that's been converted, it is. So under contract law, there was no consideration given to you, and there was no bargain for exchange whatsoever because nothing was legitimate to be anything transparent. And so could you say that you were given any consideration under common law? Isn't it a legal value that you've got to have sufficiency? Yes? And then under the eyes of everyone in common parlance, a benefit to you and receiving this, or no, a detriment was. So your court is wherever you are and wherever your county is, you see, and whatever the expectedness is of some show of monetary value where exchange has been, And is there some equal market value where inadequacy actually is? Of course, the money mechanics need to be changed. It needs to be positive inducted currency, not negative inducted. And you can't be just continuously showing some, straw man argument. But you're a man or a woman, and that's your title. And it's really where's the officer of any equal agreement who has done due diligence to make sure that your title and our rights all are upheld where some equity interest is. You've got nothing that's bargained or exchanged where the conditions are that's gone on, and this doesn't satisfy any common law whatsoever. It's called communism outright. So battery, you are battered, you are harmed, your person, and it's by some political party. God help us, that's not even tied to the land whatsoever. So brutalizedness is where someone participated in getting just whacked, and savagely in a violent way, tortured even, like burned up inside. That's called holocausted. And so is this the Divok Holocaust? It's the actual true Divok Holocaust, like it was all printed, when the Denver airport opened up on the murals. So, and the Christmas 2010 Winter Olympics, and the, have a look at the crazy play that was put on. So it's a pattern really that's placed by some creativeness where your intention and material is to be desensitized somewhere, so pain and sufferedness of others or exposedness to that violent behaviour sort of situation isn't what proper common law is whatsoever. So shouldn't it be that you should really be looking into how common law is? Otherwise, that's a brutalised condition where fearfulness is just spread, and that's just the groupthink that would have been, and a brutalisation and beast barrack placed upon you like frozen logos, and it's a crime afterward, you see, and this should be a charge which is discharged, and that's the strange attractor that was created because of anything that happened. But looking back and looking and seeing what the number is, and you're just not anymore mere chattel under civic confined and trappedness, and lacked any leadership and no proper, decentralized type of condition of consensus, that's just otherwise beast barrack, clubbed mental fortification where you've never ever looked at the right side of the court, which you should, because that sits above the Legislative Assembly, because you and I, we the people, sit above the committee that sits above the Legislative Assembly to enact laws and things. And so it's really you and I looking at where pleasure and interest is in whole brain patterning versus aversion, and watching whatever change that exists. And you're looking at a whole range of things, of course, which, how could we get into that? Of course, like sexual mutilation or the development of an armed prostitute, and what real, pornography actually is, where his body's being used for violence and everybody's entertainment. Where somebody is disempowered and you or powerless, and somebody pulls the rug out from underneath someone who's powerless, this is called pornography. And so it's a third-party intervention where colour of law could have gone on and was used, and domestic form of terrorism. And somebody's going to say white-collar, cybercrime and extortion and scheming and false advertising. And sort of, well, when you look at genocide, did any of those occur in the past? Of course they did. Was there any lone rangers in the field when that went on? Yes, there was. Was there any just one gold finger that you had a sore backside where you sat? It's a corporate latch to a financial gain for somebody, but not you or I, okay? Because why? Because it's under negative inducted economy and one monopoly that's running the show. And so a formal or informal organisation is a real criminal syndicate which is running the whole thing. You've got extortion and bribery, money launderedness, embezzlement. And don't tell me that billions of dollars wasn't made by the big Pfizer. It sure was. And so, like, who owns the big Pfizer? Yes, when you take away government, which it can, because the USA just decided, hey, we just want to get out of these organisations, and suddenly only private investors are left, and they're huge, and they're the ones who are behind such wickedness, and the people who allowed that and set it up. So brutalisation is really a streaming, for instance, of the ephemeral content that's given to you, stalking your condition to have manipulated you, you see. So it's really a dropping of material from the sky, Lukey, and deliberate regulation of the hand above the government. And it's states like Alabama and Georgia and North Carolina and Tennessee, Virginia, I think West Virginia. Vaccines not just falling from the sky right now, but isn't it just like you're finding all of this substance in the blood of raccoons and skunks and coyotes? And now you've got the ORVs, it's called oral rabies vaccines. ORVs, and they're composed of live genetic LifeColloid carrying genetic material, and it's like apparently got the rabies virus in it. Oh, wow, really? Does that exist? No, it's just crazy. So you've got common ORV modified vaccines, and ONRAB is another one, all modified adenovirus. And vaccines, it's all coated and flavoured up and put in a wax satchel for all the life to come to have consumed it. So what's the main constituent, really, of oral rabies, which is just bull dust, off the chart wrong? Because anybody going to stand up and say that Louis Pasteur plagiarised and just, lied? Yes, you'd have to, because you're scientific. You'd have to know that there is no such thing as anything sterile. It's not sterile. There's nothing sterile like you thought. It's turbulent, and it will go turbulent, just like, Pasteur's flasks did. So the mechanism where animal ingests that material causes vaccine virus. It enters the cells, thrust out through the skin, and you can have skin reactions, all sorts of things, and disease. And don't tell me that when glyphosate was introduced, that the Tasmanian devils weren't all of a sudden just eating that, and they ended up with conditions where their wounds wouldn't be able to heal and they became cancerous. So it's recombinant spore carrying the simian 40 virus, for instance. You could find that in most people that got shot up, and having the effects of wild simian 40 ability to transform cells and cause the neoplasm and the animal models to have a gain of function, and synthetic pegs used where nanomolecules are, and contamination that's really producing something which is a gain of function. And simian 40V is an example of that. So recombinant viruses expressing like that tag can show how induced cell lines and transforming properties where that is, where research setting has been. You've got simian 40 established, and it's a persistent condition where the body has really gone through a lot of collapse. You've got simian 40 capsid protein used in vitro packaged systems and capsid sort of proteins. So you've got these capsid proteins and minor capsid protein, and it's all internal act. It sort of bridges between the outer and inner. And you've got all of these sort of synthetic packaged gene material expressed and gain of function existing. So synthetic pegs and You've got capsid protein, generally referred to protein-based sort of nanostructure, and like spore, like particle, and all modified synthetic polyethylene glycol polymers. It's a process of pegylation and a modification where that's the key strategy that's going on at the moment. So the dangers of that polymer impacting clotting mechanism, like we began to talk about, and the culprit of the large synthetic vessel clots and stuck, and the inclusion of pegylated protein capsular nanoparticle-sized contaminant, which comes to interfere where all the component is and enhances the more deformation and poration. That's the formation of pores more, and artificial giant vesicles ever form more where the membrane is. And don't tell me you can't see that in the blood, which you do. So the potential harm where dangers are to your membrane poration and also the deformation, of course, you've got plenty of investigation that shows that. And the blood afterwards and the influence of those mechanical properties, especially the synthetic included crystalline liquid membrane that's synthetic, these PEGs. So polyethylene glycol polymers are showing up in where a sure lipid monolayer destabilization is, where the blood is in clotting capacity. So those things all can have a bit of a half-life, but synthetic particle transmits, and you've really got to gain a function. So Simian 40 really is used where the modern injectables were in the past, and don't tell me that that's not been corrected. You've got immunocompromised hosts where Simian 40 is, but you would have a claim where things are because that's a synthetic, and it's definite that it's caused conditions. And under Article 61 of the Commonwealth, of course, it ensures under the Magna Carta, Chapter 61, it establishes that you really have the Security Council, and they say 25 barons, well, I say 26, to enforce any charter's terms on behalf of we the people. And this is the source of power. And where that hasn't gone on, it's really a constitution itself, and including those powers derived from the constitution. And statutes in common law really is the prerogative powers. The council is 26 barons. The baron means we the people. King means we the people. That's we the people's property. And wherever we the people's property is violated, where the charter is, you see. So you've got what went on in Nepal, of course, and you've got this national ID card compulsory condition, and new bank accounts could only be created and what have you. And Generation Z demonstrated the people who wanted to do that. How could they? That would have just, it's crazy because it's an unpopular decision. And so those people were just run out of town that did that, you see. But what's left? You've got the largest institution of shareholders, Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, Corp, and those things, and the big Pfizer shares. And who owns that? Just private people. And the big Pfizer and the bank securities. And so subsidy, that offering sort of banking services taken away if you don't do something. It's like, oh my God, hey, that's what's going on. That's what's going on. All right? 80 bill gross profit for the big Pfizer. I think maybe 2025. Maybe there was 46 billion. Yeah, mate. So affluenza is really an affluence. An affluenza, that's a painful, contagious, social transmitted condition. You're going to tell me that that's not the buzzword that should be? It's an affluenza that was created clandestine to influence political outcome. And all the bugs and Wi-Fi device that's used unlawful, reducing everybody's private condition whatsoever, and handing that over to someone else so they can all watch you remote and record everything. It's sort of like wiretappedness. And the law really is illegal for anybody else to tap someone else's home and tap all your conversations and record all the private conversations that you have, recorded private conversation, and then all fished with those things, which is just off the chart, often used maybe in the wrong way fully. So in just like everything under the same system of negative economic inductance, you've got an invasion of privacy. And you've got the IMF and the UN and the monopolised rented offices and influence. And so as nobody was selected by you and I, they were elected. But bank holding influences war, nobody would say it doesn't, and the financial warfare of sanction, and then what's during that wartime a providedness of de jure governments to fund to pay military operations. Yes? Okay. But what does that create? You're during any eukaryotic sort of spore-infected condition, you've got capsids, you've got these bacteriophages, and you've got things injected where you've got, genetic material. And then you've got also synthetic, of course, and you've got these polyethylated glycol sort of molecule capsids. So nobody's going to say that's not dangerous. Nobody's going to say that doesn't give you hypersensitivity where you've got aluminum put into the mix as well, an altered function, you see. So definite, you could see cellular vacuolation. That's a high dose where animal toxic studies show that therapeutic treatment keeps little holes more where cells are. The vacuoles and lymphocyte can show lysosomal storage damage, and vacuolated red blood corpuscle shows, pockmarked and pitted red blood corpuscle. So vacuole, where it's normal, that should be present, but it's not when you look at the blood of anybody who's been toxified. So nobody's going to say that AZT back then in the 80s for HIV wasn't dangerous, and remdesivir, that's just a few molecules, the same as that. And the connection between all of it, in between all of this, and how much you getting an ouchie was behind it all. And to get an ouchie, you had to have somebody who allowed that as well. And these people are all in bed with each other. So studies really where people have cystic fibrosis, where is that? The injectable synthetic PEG and these nanocarrier cages, where's the risk factor for people who have cystic fibrosis? So clots certainly grow uncontrollable into rubber, like flesh and watermelon makes rubber. A modified protein against the specific enzymes result in pegulated protein clots and grown inside arteries. When you cook cheese or tomato or anything, it can end up like a plastic today and rubbery. And flesh certainly is with full of these substances, the same with cheese and bread. So dead food includes dietary sort of daily intakes where you've got store-bought dressings and you've got a lot of PEG molecules and things and like that, you see. So wrapping everything up, of course, you've got what's included, which has got a like shelf bread, ingredients that's baked in goods, dairy product and dressings and packaged meals. It's not ecological. It's got material in it that's these pegulated molecules. You've got it put into ice cream. You've got enzyme-resistant plasticizer. You see, it's non-ecological. Shouldn't you be looking out for what's synthetic? Yes, it just comes to tattoo the body because it can't be broken down properly. Don't tell me that doesn't interfere where everything is. Jab cell rejuvenation targets these things. Looking deeper, of course, you've got to get to know the bigger picture like we're talking about in these podcasts. I think it's really important that you'd be focused on listening into the other podcasts and tuning into more, because everything that we do, we're covering things which we haven't covered before. And yet, like the perfume, cosmetic and paint industry, you've got a medication without your consent. Yes? And macrogol, which is used for food packaging, it's enormous. It shows up in a lot of food today. That's a plastic, of course, which is also used in packaging as well. So it's biologics wherever that was, where a salt drip would have been given, and no looking into the negligence or the approach, and what the severe case of anything synthetic like that's COVID, and what's the long-term condition of that. You've got these oral laxatives that are being given, Miralax. You've got these molecules given when colonoscopies are given. You've got polyethylene glycol types of electrolyte combination solution given to people in the colon, and PEG contraindicated sort of people who have got cystic fibrosis or have any obstructiveness of the digestive organs, or have appendicitis or anything like this. It's negligence that you could use any of those, especially polyethylene glycol, you see, an all petroleum-based compound. But it's indiscriminate, and it doesn't regard, of course, the microplastic contamination where hospital IV bags are and the tubing is a definite documented concern. So anticoagulant properties where materials are, and PEG coatings on surfaces of biomaterial like cardiovascular implants and everything, you're seeing protein and platelet adhesion and a total actual protein matriarch type of feedback loop missing. So what's safeguarding everybody where you've just got a monopoly manufacturing contaminant, and reputable manufacturing sort of really could say that a certain amount of these toxins have got to be found in what they produce. Appendicitis really and a meningeal lining of the brain all could have been exacerbated by somebody having edema and that never being noticed. And what history was really done beforehand, maybe no care of nothing, because iatrogenic condition is the leading cause of death today, yes? And gain of function using a platform of N-glyconeurominic acid, which is a molecule of death that comes from animal flesh. And so you've got silica inflammation after that. You've got N-glyconeurominic acid instead that come from the animal instead of N-acetylneurominic acid, which is what we're supposed to have. So flesh, food, and that diet always raises somatostatin. That always causes antibodies to what's incorporated. And you've got you've got N-glyconeurominic acid, which is going to cause chronic inflammation, from animal flesh. So it was a big experiment that a university gets all hooked up like the Monash University did to launch this multidisciplinary research program. And when did it begin? It just shows you that planning was long before, and all the information would be given to those at the UN. How good is that? Any of it actually accurate? The pathway that's LifeColloid, where microorganism is, and LifeColloid, where plant is, and aromatic compound, it's really important in our work. You'll learn more the value of phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan, and aromatics being able to be where you are. The Gouda almond aged cheese culture and things like this was what I've put together to assist to help where this whole condition is. Maybe you should look into this. Anyway, you could look into job cell rejuvenation for sure, and ever more podcasts that talk a little bit about this. But it's really good news that if you're eating life food, you're restoring this shikimic pathway, which you could learn about, and shows that's coming up, and how glyphosate can have really been alarming to all of that. But a long time ago, it began, and glaring, obviously, the shikimic pathway that makes these aromatic amino acid really suddenly is being deleted, and you've got this epigenetic condition and cystic fibrotic conditions afterward. So the bigger picture really is how job cell rejuvenation can target all of this, and you've got a proper NASFET system, a noble element semiconductive field effect transfer, where you're getting energy from the vacuum, and you really do need to. We're going to be talking more about all of this, but you need to have this for serotonin and melatonin and chlorhexidine butane and ubiquitin molecule, to have folate, dopamine, epinephrine, melanin, and all of these things you see. Anyway, I'm thinking that we've really done our podcast today. Look, I hope you guys are having a really wonderful day as you've been tuning into this, and look forward to catch up to you in another show. Love you guys.